everyone. I'm Samantha Meredith, and I'm the Executive Director Curator at the Chatham-Kent Black Historical Society and Black Mecca Museum. We want to welcome you today to Beyond the Underground Railroad, Strategies for Confronting Anti-Black Racism.
Hello, everybody. My name's Stephen Cook. I'm the Curator and Site Manager at Uncle Tom's Cabin Historic Site in Dresden. And today we're going to be speaking with three women who have a strong local role in combating anti-Black racism in their community. We'll speak with educators Candace Fung and Irene Moore Davis, and the important role they play in combating anti-Black racism in education through resource development and mentorship. And we'll meet Rebecca Haskell Thomas. She's recently been engaged by the municipality of Chatham-Kent to head up their newly formed Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Department. I know the three of us are really anxious to hear of her plans to combat anti-Black racism right here in our own backyard.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Shannon Prince, and I'm the curator of the Buxton National Historic Site and Museum in North Buxton, Ontario. We'd like to begin this program by acknowledging the land that we are presently on. We acknowledge the land that we are on the lands of the Anishinaabe Nation. This spot where we gather is the traditional land of the Three Fires Confederacy, the Ottawa, Potawatomi, and Ojibwe. We also recognize that this land is now home to the Delaware Nation. This land was settled through the McKee Purchase Treaty of 1790, and we, as beneficiaries of the treaty, must recognize our responsibilities, including our collective responsibilities to the land and water.
And it's our pleasure to introduce Candace Fung here with us now. Hi, Candace.
Thanks so much, Stephen. Hello, and welcome, everyone.
So Candace was born in Toronto. She was a teacher here in Chatham for many years and now serves as the first, number one, inclusive diversity consultant with the Lambton-Kent District School Board. The position was created in the late summer of 2020, and she represents grades K through 12. Now, Candace immediately set about forming a district-wide Black student voice. It was a need identified to her by Black students and led by those very students. This student-driven group creates a safe place for Black students to navigate systemic and interpersonal anti-Black racism and allows them to develop positive relationships within the education system and provides them with opportunities for mentoring with Black staff. Now, Candace, how many years have you been an educator now?
Oh.
That long.
Over 20 years.
Over 20 years. Wow. Yeah. Well, it's our pleasure to have you with us today, Candace.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. I appreciate it.
So, Candace, our first question for you today is, can you tell us a little bit about your position that you have at the board?
Sure. So I'm lucky enough to inhabit a position that was created by the board, as Stephen said, in late 2020. And I think that was a response that we're seeing everywhere. Many equity, diversity, inclusion positions being created. And our board's strategic priority, one of the strategic priorities is championing anti-racism. So it's not just anti-Black racism, it's also anti-Asian racism, it's also Islamophobia, it's anti-Semitism, and we're also dealing with two LGBTQ issues of discrimination as well. So sort of any issue of discrimination. But I think it's important to realize that hierarchically speaking, anti-Black racism is something that is within all communities and specifically even within equity-seeking groups, anti-Black racism is present. So I think the concerted effort there to combat anti-Black racism actually extends to every other equity-seeking group, and it's been an exciting position. So it includes providing resources for teachers. It includes providing professional development. It includes looking over policy, procedure, and best practices and putting forth some of those best practices. And, one of the most important is including our local Black history in our curriculum, embedding it year round, and really encouraging our Black students and all students in the board to embrace our Black history, our wealth of Black history. And that's an essential part of combating anti-Black racism. Positive representation, celebration of our history and the everyday lives of Black people is integral to sort of combating the harm that historical, structural, systemic anti-Black racism has.
Candace, I think maybe the listeners might be surprised, especially if you don't have a student in the school system today, how prevalent anti-Black racism is within the school system, not just here in Chatham-Kent, but I suspect, province-wide. But I have a couple of teachers who say it's not unheard of or uncommon for a student to use the N-word in the classroom in front of the teacher. Whereas in our day, I don't know that would happen. So can you speak to what you're dealing with in 2022?
Sure. And to me, it's sort of unbelievable that that the issues we're dealing with in 2022 are as severe as they are. So the N-word causes, as it should, lots of contentious conversations. And the N-word is used. It's become part of common vernacular for some Black people who have reclaimed the word. And we know that there is a difference in terms of not only who says it, how it's said, and what the intention is, but there's also, I think there's this understanding that all Black people feel this way about the use of the N-word or that way about the use of the N-word. And we know that there's a diversity of responses to whether reclaiming that word is appropriate or not appropriate. Many Black kids unfortunately have been the target of the word, and some Black kids know the history of the harm and violence that word symbolizes and encapsulates, and the legacies too. Dehumanization attached to that word, and some people don't know it all, and some people just hear it everywhere in music with their friends and use it as a term of sort of fellowship, of connection. But we really have to work on knowing that history of the term and knowing that it comes from enslavement and enslaved people being stripped of their names, being stripped of their language, being stripped of their culture, and only being known as that derogatory term. So we really can't underestimate the harm that word does. And we really need to have sort of a multi-dimensional understanding of that transaction when that word is used. We really do need to contextualize. We really do need to educate, and that's really what we're trying to do, is educate everyone. And for educators, it really is encouraging educators to disrupt the use of this word anytime they hear it, without criminalizing Black students who use the word, without humiliating Black students who use the word, without shaming Black students who have reclaimed the word and use it as common vernacular, while at the same time sort of educating them about listeners and what that might mean to other people and how it's heard in different ways. Some people talk about zero tolerance policy. for this word. And what we really want to be careful about is not criminalizing Black students who use the term amongst themselves as denoting friendship. So really, really complex. I hope I answered that question a little bit. Unfortunately, what I see, excuse me, or what I understand is whether students tell teachers or not, most students hear the word, right? So there needs to be lots of unpacking with that word.
For sure, for sure. That's a very tough subject too, because it's in a lot of books, Candace. And I know the one book, The Underground Railroad by Barbara Smucker. And I can remember grade 6 teacher from Indian Creek, anyway, it was one of the schools, but she had called to say, I'm not going to allow this word to be heard or read because it's very derogatory, and she didn't want to, say about it, talk about it. She said, I'm just going to eliminate it altogether. We're just going to jump over that word and just say, this is a bad word, so don't repeat it. And my response was, I think they need to understand the context, which is because they're talking. This is about a person that's being enslaved, and this is someone who is down on the plantation. So in that context, that's where it stays in that book and on that page. But they need to understand where it came from, and she didn't really want to address that because it was a bad word. So I'm just going to bypass it altogether. So it was interesting, because on one hand, she wanted to educate them and bring the history, about slavery, the Underground Railroad, etc., but did not want to touch any bad things. When she would talk about, people being whipped, she would just say, she wouldn't go, they would put it in little irons, so it was, they were almost coding it, with a little bit of fact, a little bit of reality, but they didn't want to upset the students. And I was like, okay, this has been quite a few years ago, numerous years ago, but it was quite interesting discussion. But again, that takes me to another question about, so what roles can parents and part of the community do? What are some of the things that we can do outside to help combat those issues that are within the school system?
Wonderful. It's a great question. And I think, Shannon, that you have touched on that in talking about your past memories. So this desire to sanitize or euphemize,
yes, that's the word,
or neutralize the violence of the past does not help. We must remember the violence of the past. We must talk about the Middle Passage. We must talk about the generations of free labor, dehumanization. We must talk about these things in order to, the ultimate goal always is freedom and allowing all students to have a positive self-concept. But we must know the struggle for freedom and, what the struggle was really about. And we also have to not shy away from what humans are capable of. And we need to remember that history tells us that we are capable of really horrible things. And if we're going to imagine future freedoms, we really have to work at that by looking at the dynamics of the past. So I think that's something we can do. Honesty is really important, and hearing the voices of people connected to that history is essential as well. Sometimes we want to forget or minimize, but then we're not gaining a comprehensive view of how anti-Black racism started, why it was started, and how the legacies of anti-Black racism we have today. So, really important.
Yeah.
Thank you for that question.
It really is. It really is. Yeah.
And thank you, Candace. We can't let you go without sending our love and our congratulations for the award that you were given at the end of January by the Ontario Black History Society. Candace was given the Mary Matilda Winslow Award for Advocacy in Public Education. It's for her dedication and commitment towards dismantling anti-Black racism, educating on Black Canadian history, and advocating on behalf of students and families in the public education system. And I can't think of a more worthy individual. Congratulations, Candace.
Yes, awesome.
Thank you all so much. It wouldn't have happened without you. So the thanks and the congratulations are yours, really. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing your morning with us.
Oh, my pleasure.
And I have the honor and pleasure to introduce our next speaker, interviewee, Irene Moore Davis. Now, Irene, her resume, her bio is just unbelievable. So I've clipped it just to give you a sense of what an amazing young lady she is. She is an author, a historian, and an educator, and as the manager of the continuing education at St. Clair College. She also has deep roots here in Buxton, and she is the president of the Essex County Black Historical Research Society and is extensively involved with numerous projects and organizations here and abroad to ensure there's equity, diversity, and inclusion. So welcome, Miss Irene. It's so wonderful to have you sit with us today and share your insight and all your wealth of knowledge. How's it going?
It's going great. Thanks for having me, and thanks above all for calling me a young lady. I don't get that much anymore.
You deserve it. So one of the things that we are talking about are the strategies confronting anti-Black racism. But one of the things that really piqued my curiosity was the initiative that you were involved with the Black Graduation Coach Program. So how did that all come to be? Because I think that is a wonderful project that was lacking that you saw within the system, not only for Blacks, for Indigenous, and et cetera. So tell us about that, if you don't mind.
So, certainly Black organizations with which I've been involved for years have been meeting pretty regularly with the 2 English language school boards in Essex County, at least. And certainly after the death of George Floyd, in that period of time when people were feeling so much emotion and so much outrage about Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and other unjust killings, there became a greater sense of urgency in terms of stepping up, ramping up those meetings with the school board senior teams. So 2 of my organizations really got involved in taking the lead on that. Black Women of Forward Action, which I actually co-founded, and the Black Council of Windsor, Essex. We began to meet on a pretty consistent basis with both the English language school boards in our county, and just talking to them about some of the concerns that we had about anti-Black racism in the schools, things that had gone unaddressed for a very long time. Many of us are parents or have family members who have been contending with those issues of exclusion, lack of representation, streaming, the various forms of anti-Black racism that K-12 students often encounter, unfortunately, even in this day and age. So one of the solutions that was discussed was getting involved in a provincial funding opportunity for Black graduation coaches. There was one in place at the Greater Essex County District School Board. Now they've actually increased the number of personnel that they have, both as the counselors in the Create Your Future program and the Black Graduation Coach program. And the English Separate Board in our area has recently hired 2 Black graduation coaches as well. And that's really important. We know that kids, for a variety of reasons, They don't have equivalent access to role models representing the various professions and trades and occupations that they might be interested in. There's a lot of negative messaging that they receive from a very early age that sort of deters them or discourages them from pursuing certain aspects of higher learning or academic streams. And we want to counteract that as well as we can with positive role models in the high schools. Hopefully we can extend that into the intermediate grades at some point, but positive role models in the high schools that can address those gaps and really help to steer them in the right direction and just give them that consistent messaging that they can do this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so important, and like you say, because there's that role model for a lot of them is not there. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
for sure. And we often find, even when there are role models, even when there are parents and guardians and family members that are saying, you can do this, you can be anything you want to be. Yeah. There's just negative messaging that's received in the classroom or from other personnel in the schools, and people may not even realize they're doing it. We have to contend with implicit bias being so much a part of everyone's composition at this point because we've been living in a racist society and we've adopted or absorbed a lot of those beliefs and values without even realizing it sometimes. So it's just the subtle ways in which students are sometimes discouraged from trying their best or from pursuing math and science or things of that nature. We've got to counteract those on a pretty consistent basis. And it's easier to do that with some appropriate allies and role models and members of our own community in the schools embedded for the purpose of steering people in the right direction than to address it after school at home if you even know what's been going on in the school. So we really think this is a good model and we're looking forward to its successful implementation and expansion.
Yeah, so that sounds like a great program. Something else we were wondering is if there was any programs or strategies that were available at the college level to kind of combat these racism in that.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with some things that have happened lately. Maybe they're long overdue, but they are happening. At St. Clair College, where I work, we certainly have a very active diversity and inclusion committee that's been not only sharing information, but really working towards some knowledge mobilization strategies to help all of our faculty and staff get more aware and more comfortable with best practices in terms of addressing, lack of diversity, lack of inclusion, issues with representation, making sure that the language is there. Our professional development wing and certainly our Center of Academic Excellence have been doing a really great job in terms of providing a lot more training and follow-up in terms of all forms of bias and helping people to, work better with racialized students, with students from the trans community, with students from the entire 2S LGBTQ plus community. A lot of great learning around working with Indigenous students and certainly events and webinars that increase students' capacity to work with one another competently. So we're really proud of some of that programming. And I have to say, over at my alma mater, the undergraduate institution I attended, the University of Windsor, they've certainly been doing some great work too in terms of anti-Black racism specifically. They now have an anti-Black racism focused office, which is run by a very good friend of mine, Miriam Tolson Murty, and I've been involved in some committees over there to help with the implementation of that work as well. They have a vice president of diversity, equity, and inclusion for the first time, and he's really doing some great things. So we're excited to see many of the strategies that are being rolled out at that institution too.
Irene, you grew up down in Windsor, and I'm certain that you, at some point in your youth, experienced anti-Black racism. We're noticing this uptick in anti-Black racism within the education sector in recent years. And I'm wondering if you, what advice could you give to a young person today that's dealing with that, with those harmful words and actions in some instances? What advice would you give to a young person today?
Well, I mean, something that I always say to young people in my family and young people with whom I come into contact, a couple of things. One is always remember who you are. always remember who you are and don't be afraid of other people. Now, I didn't come up with that myself. It's a line from one of my favorite movies, Elizabeth.
Huh?
but it's true. It's one of my favorite lines because it's true. Remember who you are and do not be afraid of them.
Yeah.
Whether you're the Queen of England or somebody in a high school. But the thing is, when you are possessed of a belief in your own capabilities and have pride in your community and your people, your ancestors, your family, yourself, you're going to be a little more resilient and more able to resist those negative messages because you don't own them, you don't absorb them, you understand that you are made of really good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But in addition to that, in addition to just, your personal kind of emotional boundaries, force field, whatever we want to call it, do reach out for community support if there's a problem. And don't feel that you have to just accept those things. Even if you are the only person of color in your school, or if there aren't very many of you, there are still community resources out there and support networks that will assist you if you reach out and let them know what's going on. Don't suffer in silence. When we suffer in silence, we harm ourselves, but we are also harming the other people who are not learning the appropriate lessons and who are being positively reinforced in the behaviors that will not serve them well in school, will not serve them in the workplace or in life. So everybody needs to do better. And, don't feel that you have to just hide what you're going through. Make an issue of it to whatever extent you feel comfortable. Consult with the adults in your life who can give you good advice, and just don't just take it.
Mm-hmm.
Words of wisdom. That's awesome.
Yes.
Thank you, Irene.
Wow, very good. What a wonderful conversation we had and advice. And I love that. Yeah. Don't be afraid. Yeah. Very good. And also, you are also receiving an award this weekend. So congratulations to you on receiving the Harriet Tubman for commitment to a purpose for raising awareness of the importance of preserving Black history. So well deserved. And obviously you are doing it 24/7. So congratulations. And we thank you for that. And thank you for sharing all of your wealth of knowledge and information today. It's truly been a pleasure. So thank you and congratulations.
Thanks.
Congratulations, Irene.
Yes, congratulations. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Rebecca Haskell Thomas is the coordinator of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, a new position with the municipality of Chatham-Kent. Rebecca brings to this new role a combination of education and experience, including a BA and MA in criminology, focusing on how formal and informal systems, institutions, and policies center some cultures, perspectives, and people while excluding others. Rebecca's education is accompanied by experience applying health equity, cultural safety, and humility in nonprofit and public organizations. Rebecca identifies with the intersecting identities of white settler, able-bodied, queer, formally educated, woman, mother, and partner. She enjoys spending time outdoors with our more than human relatives. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Well, Rebecca, we're really excited to see this new position created by the municipality, and look forward to the wonderful work that you're going to achieve in the position. We thought we'd start the conversation today talking about the three words within the title of your position: diversity, equity, inclusion. They all sound similar, but they're a little different. Maybe you can give us just an overview of what they mean.
Yes, definitely. So when we're talking about diversity at an individual level, it's talking about the unique qualities, experiences, perspectives, skills, knowledge, and characteristics we all bring. So in the bio that Sam read there, you heard some of the identities that I bring. So it's recognizing that, for example, just knowing I'm a municipal employee doesn't capture my whole identity. At an individual level, we have many overlapping identities that make us who we are and influence how we experience the world. At an organizational level, it's about the range of perspectives and experiences, talents and skills, abilities we have across our organization. And it's also talking about the characteristics like ethnicity, culture, religion, spirituality, sexual orientation, age, education, gender identity, all of those things. And it's acknowledging and seeing those differences as strengths. It's acknowledging that we're stronger and more creative and can better serve our community when we have people from diverse backgrounds and with diverse perspectives and skill sets in our organization. So that's what we mean when we're talking about diversity. When we talk about equity, we're talking about fairness, and it's about creating the conditions where everyone has what they need to thrive. It's about identifying and understanding who has been left out, how and why, and looking at the root causes and the systemic barriers, and then taking actions to address those. And then when we talk about inclusion, it's really about valuing people for who they are and providing opportunities for everyone to participate, contribute, and be engaged and be their authentic selves, whether it's in our organization as a staff member or accessing our services.
That's it. I think that is so important, because I think sometimes the municipality, and no offense taken, but through years, there was not a lot of diversity within the municipality. And I think with what has happened in the last several years, everything has come to light. And now so many people are really understanding and realizing, it's like they're looking around and seeing, wow, I guess we don't fall or fit in that paradigm. So we really need to do some really thinking. And, and I'm sad on one side to say it's taken this long to do it, but glad that now they have realized it, to really understand. And you have come to this position to really open eyes and, be very inclusive, because I think at one time it was not very welcoming. I'll tell you, I experienced it firsthand. So yeah, so I'm glad you're there.
I appreciate you sharing that experience, Shannon, and certainly we'll be looking to have conversations with people about where we've been and where we need to go as an organization.
Yeah. Good.
So my question for you, Rebecca, is I know it's really early on in your position there, but can you tell us a little bit about how yourself and the municipality are going to develop an overall strategy for this?
For sure. So just to kind of create some context, I guess, or give some context. In April of 2021, the Municipal Council passed a motion to fund a coordinator position to help develop a diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy. And that was part of a recommendation from a report that spoke to the impacts of COVID-19 on our community and recognized that because of existing inequities, some communities in Chatham-Kent have been impacted differently and in different ways than others. And so the recommendation came from wanting to recognize that we really need to be considering equity and how we're contributing to equity versus inequities in our decision making going forward. So over the coming months, we're going to be gathering information to help us understand where we're at and where we need to go as we develop this strategy. So the diversity, equity, inclusion strategy isn't specifically focused on anti-Black racism, but we will be addressing racial inequities and looking at our past and what we need to do in the future as we move forward. And I think this is one of the reasons that Black history and Black History Month is so important. It is our history. And we need to look at the ways that our policies, our processes, and our programs have helped or harmed Black communities or other communities who experience different forms of oppression. And looking at our history helps us understand how we've got to where we are and what we need to be able to do to move forward. And we want to move towards an environment where we are going to uplift, support, and provide equitable opportunities for Black and African communities in Chatham-Kent. So our strategy at first will be internal. So we will work closely with community partners to support diversity and equity and inclusion in our community, but we really need to start to build some capacity internally. And we'll be looking at things like how can we ensure our decisions, our policies, processes, and programs are moving us towards equity and not contributing to inequities. In other words, how can we ensure our services are fair and helping to create the conditions where everyone can thrive? So we'll be doing some work to support people to be able to recognize unconscious biases and how they are being integrated into our work. And that's going to be a lot of capacity building internally, but it's also going to require us to look at how can we support a diverse workforce, especially among our leaders who are making decisions that affect people across the community. And as I said earlier, we really recognize that we're stronger and better and can serve our community better when we have people from diverse backgrounds and with diverse perspectives and skills in our organization. And one thing I want to mention is that engagement will be a key part of developing this strategy. And over the coming months, we're going to be talking to folks both within the municipality and in our community about where we're at and what will be important to include in the strategy. There will be some formal opportunities, but we really want to focus on relationship building and know that different communities and different people may prefer to participate and talk with us in different ways. So we're really trying to be flexible in the approach that we take. And we want to acknowledge that relationship building can take time and it may not happen on a predetermined timeline that we set. So we're going to hopefully be having some ongoing conversations with community partners and with folks across the municipality. We will be reaching out to community partners, but we're also going to be launching a diversity, equity, and inclusion website on our Let's Talk CK platform. And we do encourage anybody who's interested in this strategy to visit that website. And there you can find contact information for myself, as well as our intern, Amrit Kara. And we always encourage people to please feel free to reach out if you have any comments, concerns, or questions about the strategy as well.
Oh, that's good. That's good. It's one way, another thing to get that link out so people are aware that it's there as well. Mm-hmm. Good, thanks. So in your previous role before coming to this one, you were at the Chatham-Kent Public Health Unit. So in 2020, they declared racism as a health issue. So can you just speak to that a little bit? Define that for us?
Sure, definitely. Public health is a passion of mine. And in June of 2020, the Board of Public Health declared racism a public health issue. And a core mandate of public health is to raise awareness about and work with appropriate partners to make sure that everyone has opportunities for health and well-being. And racism in all its forms, whether it's overt or systemic, impacts racialized people's opportunities to access things like education, quality employment, income, healthcare, and a host of other things that are really important to people's health and well-being. And there's a lot of research that shows that these are all strong predictors of people's health and well-being across their lifespan. So because of experiences of racism and discrimination, racialized groups, including Black communities, tend to have poor physical and mental health outcomes than white communities. So in other words, racism is preventing people from having access to the conditions that support their health and their well-being. And having said that, I want to recognize that Black communities are vibrant, healthy, and thriving despite of this, but it's not because of the policies or systems that have been put in place. So when we say racism is a public health issue, we're really saying that racism is leading to unfair and unnatural differences in opportunities for health and well-being. It's leading to health inequities. So declaring racism as a public health issue raises for public health and community partners that we need to be making concerted efforts to address those inequities. We need to work towards health equity for racialized communities, including Black communities. So we need to understand the ways our systems and policies are leading to poorer health for racialized communities and address the root causes. And certainly these are things that we'll be considering as we move forward in the municipal diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy.
Well, it sounds like you've got yourself a full plate, Rebecca. And we want to make the offer. We are a resource to you. If there's any way that we can partner with you to help you with your strategies, we've got in-person resources, online resources, virtual. We can reach people virtually as well. So we're at your disposal if we can be of any assistance.
I really appreciate that, Stephen. And I know that you all are incredibly busy. And I want to say thank you for all your work and happy Black History Month. And encourage my municipal colleagues and community members to visit and make use of the resources of these amazing organizations in our community throughout the year. And thank you for your work. And we'll definitely be taking you up on your offer when you're a little bit less busy.
Try us in March.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. And we can't wait to see some of the strategies and stuff go into effect in our Chatham-Kent municipality.
Thanks all. Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
We are now going to welcome Adia Johnson, a student at McNaughton Public School and member of Black Student Voices, with an original poem called Followers.
Hi, my name's Adia Johnson, and this is the poem that I wrote when I was doing some racist things. Followers. Why do you think people say racist things? Could it be peer pressure? I say no. To me, being pressured would be someone trying to make me take my first sip of alcohol. That's peer pressure. And racism is not that. Nobody walks up to you and says, go over there and tell that girl that racist joke and go make her feel like her race and skin is a bad thing. Making racist comments and jokes are all your choice. It does, however, make me think, are my so-called friends even really my friends? If they just laugh and say nothing while watching me have to stand by myself for my own race because they want to feel popular? Are they really my friends if they only care about what the cool person who is saying the racist comments thinks about them? Are they really my friends if they can watch me being discriminated against again and again while saying nothing? They watch me weep and suffer while they stay cool and I stay sad because I feel I don't belong. They make me don't belong.
So that brings to a close our program of strategies for confronting anti-Black racism. I hope you enjoyed it. We want to thank our guests, Irene Moore-Davis, Candace Fung, and Rebecca Haskell-Thomas for their insights and the wonderful work that they're working on. Ladies, you enjoyed the presentations today?
Yes,
Yeah.
they were great.
Lots of information that was being shared and being compiled. So looking forward to it. It's going to be a wonderful year, hopefully.
And as I said during the program, I know we'll do our part to share any resources that we have. And that being said, I will say that we are offering virtual tours at Uncle Tom's Cabin Historic Site. We've just opened up a new block of tickets, so you can register by going to www.uncletomscabin.org and checking out our virtual opportunities there. So we'd love to be able to get into the schools, into your homes, and share the fascinating history of Josiah Henson and the Underground Railroad and Black history here in Ontario. So please make use of that resource. It's available on our website.
Yes, and we'll be reopening for tours in March in person. So make sure you book your tour with us. And we also look forward to seeing you in May for our symposium.
And we just presently reopened. So book your tours as well with tour times of 10:30, 12:30, and 2:30. And hopefully we will have our 99th Labor Day homecoming celebration this Labor Day. So hopefully we will do a little bit more as opposed to last year. We'll see, but we'll have something to celebrate.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us on our Beyond the Underground Railroad episode. And we look forward to seeing you on the next one.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.